Hi guys and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the Odepro WD40 diving light. Of course we're going to do a little bit of an unboxing. We're going to take a look at the light features, how they work, batteries, charger, and some recommendations of my own. Of course, as usual, we're going to jump into the water to see how the light performs in the actual diving environment, as well as a bit of a pros and a cons. So let's get the video started. As you can see, the WD40 comes in a cartoon boxing, so well, it's quite simply made, but we're not here for the box. And inside of the box, very well protected, we have a bit of a foam cover, and then we have the actual light with its accessories. We'll start by the light itself. And now there's some bubble wrap, let's throw that away. And here we have the light itself. It's one of Odepro's more simple, more basic lights, but it's a very good light when it comes to how reliable it is. The light itself offers space for two 18 or 26 650s or also 3 C cells, so it's actually a very flexible light when it comes to the power source. In the front we have a nice Cree XML, proven LED, we all know it, so very good LED there, big reflector, very nice. If you look at it in the actual camera, looks very nice and yellow all around, so again they're made well for each other. We have some nice cooling fins, and we have a nice, well, I call it a nice, very grippy design because it's a bit bigger in the front, it's a bit bigger in the aft, so on the actual back part, so it's actually very nice and easy to grab. On top of that we have some nice anti-skid finish here. In the back we have quite a big hole for a lanyard, so that's also very handy. The light itself, if we open it, we can see that the light has 3 O-rings, and this is one of the reasons why I also enjoy this light a lot. We have 3 O-rings and a very beautiful spacing between the actual O-rings and the thread, so there is a good spacing in between them so they don't come in the other's way, so that's actually quite nice. We have a nice driver on this side, but before we actually start with the light and putting the batteries in, we're just gonna check out what comes included on top of that in the actual package. Depending where you're getting it, you might be also getting some C cells. In this case, the normal 1.5 volt C cells, which are alkaline batteries. I personally am not a friend of them because, well, the way I use lights and by how much lights and how often I use diving lights, these batteries would be very environmentally unfriendly to be using, because I would always be needing to buy new ones. That's why I really recommend you to use rechargeable ones, but these you can also buy in post. Inside the actual package we also have a small user manual with some informations. If it's the first time you're buying a diving light, definitely take a read through them. We have a nice lanyard, always good, a wrist strap to have with you, and also a spare set of the 3 O-rings. So that's always what comes standard in the package. Now to the actual battery options, we have either the C cells, or we can also use the 26 650s. They do fit in, 2 of them, so that's a very nice thing. There you either have one of these which are protected or also one of these which are unprotected. This depends on what you will be using. And then also we have the option of using an 18 650s. The adapter for those actually comes included, but in case one day you will be needing an 18 to 26 650 adapter, it's easy to do it with a piece of rubber tubing, rubber pipe, the one you use on your garden hose. If you get the right size, it works actually perfectly, and even better than this kind of adapter because they won't shake around. They will grab onto the actual battery and they won't be shaking around. The batteries itself, I'm going to be using our unprotected ones, but again, we also have the option of using the protected batteries, and for this light I definitely recommend you to use a protected cell. No matter which kind of lithium ion you're using, definitely use a protected cell because the light does not have the protection feature built in. Now let's put the actual batteries in to the light. So as you can already see, this is the adapter I was talking about. It's a simple plastic, in this case plastic tubing, and it just gives the spacing or adds the spacing which a 26 650, the thicker battery, would have inside the battery casing. We'll start with the negative pole always down first. The positive pole always goes towards the driver, but if you're not sure, it's even written on the outside of the light, so you always can use that as a reference. Closing the light back down, we have a few turns to go, but it's definitely a nice and smooth go, and also the O-rings, they go in nice and easily, they're not trying to get out of there. I've seen lights where it's really, you see they're starting to squeeze outside, not at all on this light. Once the light is closed, the light will come on the highest mode and also on the only mode. We have about 1050 lumens of output on this, which is the maximum for the Cree XML. But here we have a simple on and off switch also. It's a simple rotary switch, so you do not have any switch, any hole, any magnet, nothing basically that can get damaged or can risk water getting inside of the light. So in the end, having this kind of on and off switch is something very good and mainly very reliable to have. The light itself, if you take a look at the light angle, it's difficult to see on the actual camera, but the light, the hot spot is quite small, but we also have a good spill for some night diving, cave or wreck diving. But the spot itself is actually quite nice, and this light, I've been using it now twice on a wreck dive, and it's very, very fun to use on that dive. So definitely a good light, but this always depends on what is your love, what exactly you need. This is always a question when you're buying a light, but I hope with this I can always give you a bit of an idea. So the spot on this case, I would call it about a 9, maybe a 10-degree angle. Now, one more thing I need to tell you, and this is quite important for this kind of switch type, as we always have a little bit of a spacing in the thread, so it can actually screw open and close. There's always a bit of a margin in the actual thread. So if the light is closed and I just, or in this case completely closed on, and I open it a little bit to turn it off on land, and I will go diving with the outside pressure, the actual casing will be pressed together, and what happens is the light will come on. As you can see here, just by pressing it, the light comes on. Something very simple. And so this does not happen. What we can do is just very simple. Instead of just giving it this much of a turn, just give it about a quarter of a turn. If you give it a quarter of a turn, it won't come on anymore. And this is literally just a small bit of a margin we have in the thread, and this will happen with any light which has this kind of mechanical rotary switch. So this is not about this unit itself. The same thing was with the Odepro WD40, which is, by the way, if we could call it exactly the same light, it's just a bit smaller and mainly shorter. It will only work with one 18650 battery, but therefore it's smaller. So this is actually in general the same LED, almost the same reflector, but we could call it a big brother if you need a longer runtime, if you want some bigger batteries inside, because if you're using two 26650s, you have at least like 3 times the runtime of the WD40. But this all depends on what you personally need. So I like to call this guy the big brother of the WD40, which I've reviewed previously on my channel, because you just have a bit of a longer runtime, though you have exactly the same output on one mode. Now guys, I think I talked already enough about the light. It's nice to see the actual lighting angle here, but now I would say let's jump into the water, let's get the light wet, and let's see how the light, the WD40, performs underwater in the actual diving environment. Alright guys, so I hope you could get a better idea on how this Odepro light performs in the actual underwater environment, where I guess most of you will be using a diving light. I know that's something I always say, but in general that's where you're gonna be using a diving light. So as you can see, the light itself performs very well. I can really tell you, by using a good set of 26650s, you can have an immense long runtime. In this case, and this is the reason why I also said this is a very good backup light or even a primary light for some tech divers, because if you're going to a certain depth, you don't need the 4, the 5, the 6, the 8000 lumens. A 1 or 2000 lumen light is also more than enough at this kind of depth, because it gets quite dark. But as a backup light, it can still do more than 4 or 5 hours at least with this kind of 26650. So it's definitely a great backup light, and something I also enjoy a lot now coming to the pros and cons is not just the long runtime possibility on it, but it's also the flexibility, because there are people who don't really want to use a lithium-ion battery, and for those, well, you can still use a C cell. So it gives you some flexibility, although I do not recommend it at all, but this is my personal opinion, because they're just not really environmental friendly. You only use them once and you need to throw them away. Lithium-ion you can use hundreds of times recharging them. Also, the light itself is built very sturdy. It's very heavy. You can feel actually in terms of weight it's heavier than some other lights in about the same size and light output segment, so it's definitely heavier. Mainly the head part, it's just built very sturdy. It really feels like, it looks like very thick, good 3 O-rings. We could call it a tank under the diving light. So it's definitely very, very good and sturdy light. What I also enjoy on it is just simply the mechanical rotary switch, that there is no switch, no magnet which can get damaged, but this depends a lot on you. Therefore there is also no power indicator, no modes. So this is always a question, what do you actually need? The negative part on this light, it's actually quite hard, and again this is my personal opinion, but I would like maybe to see this light with, let's call it an XHP 35 maybe, or even a 50, to give a bit more, 1500 and 1800 lumenish light. It's possible with this kind of batteries, but there again there are some others, like for example the DIV02 Pro I've reviewed recently on my channel. It's not the same brand in this case, but it's something where you get the 2000 lumens with two 18650s. In this case we have just simply a light which gives us 1000 lumens reliable light, but also a very long runtime if we want to. It's also a relatively cheap light, to be honest. If you check this out on Amazon, or also I think AliExpress, they sell it, Alibaba, something like this, they definitely have quite good prices on the light. The light we have here, we are talking about I think around $50, even with the C cells already included, so that's not at all a bad price for the kind of light you see here. So that's actually all I want to tell you about the WD40. It's been a pleasure having it with me. It's been a pleasure also having you. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up as usual. If you didn't do so, please subscribe to my channel to not miss out on any of my future videos. And as usual, I wish you a good and safe diving, and see you next time.